Hi, this is Sarah, and I'm going to show you how you can create your own custom Seesaw activities. You may have already been using and sharing activities from your school and district library or from the community library, or even activities that other teacher friends have shared with you. Today, I'm going to show you how to create your own custom activities. These slides will walk you through how to get started, and momentarily, I'm going to step over to my Seesaw class and show you what it looks like live and in person. So you'll click the green plus add button, and you can choose to remix from the community library or the school and district library if you're part of Seesaw for Schools, or my library. You could even remix an activity that you've done in the past, or you can create a brand new activity from scratch. So today what we're going to do is tap on my library, then we'll tap on create new activity, and I will show you that in just a moment. You can customize your activities with Seesaw icons, and I want to point out to you that this is a link. If at some point you want to go and look up these Seesaw icon shortcuts, you can look them up clicking on this link, or you can type in Seesaw icon shortcuts in a Google search and you will get images that show this. And I just want to point out how this works. If in a Seesaw set of directions you type the word photo with colons on both sides, so colon, photo, colon, it will show the camera icon in your Seesaw activity instructions. So one thing that's really nice is when your students respond to an activity, the responses come in a nice grid format and they're all attached to that activity. Once your students have completed an activity, you can give them feedback by commenting on their work and using the drawing tool to mark up their work, and even using the microphone to record a comment for them. Before we go over and learn how to make an activity, I just want to talk for a minute about giving good instructions to students. So this is an example of pretty bad instructions, but if I wanted my student to write about a book, I might say, read a book and talk about why you liked it, add a picture and put it in your journal. But I could definitely give clearer, better directions for my students. And there are some specific things that you can do in Seesaw to make your directions more easily understood by your students. First of all, write in words that your students and families can understand. It helps if you write at your students' level so that they can understand what you're asking them to do. Second, you can use the microphone tool to add voice instructions. And again, this is an accommodation that can help all of your students. Third, use the Seesaw icon shortcuts to add pictures to your instructions. Offer a choice of tools to respond with. And if you want your students to use a particular tool, tell them. And you can do that using the icon shortcuts. And when appropriate, include an example for students to look at. Sometimes you might want to include an example and sometimes you might not. I will show you how you can easily add an example to your instructions if you want to do that. So we're going to look back at these instructions again, and then together we're going to build an activity using these guidelines for activity instructions, and I will show you step by step how we can do that. In my Seesaw class, I'm going to click the plus add button and click assign activity. And rather than choosing an activity that's already been made, I'm going to choose one from scratch. So I'm going to click create new activity. And you're going to start with an activity name. And then you're going to type the instructions for your students. So I just basically copied and pasted instructions for my first activity, but I want to show you how this looks from the editing point and then what it looks like when you're ready to add that for your students. So it says today we're going to give a book talk, and then I go on to give some other directions. And then I tell the students exactly what I want them to do in Seesaw after they're finished. After you read your book, number 1, tap colon, add colon. That's going to give the symbol that says add response. Number 2, show us the cover using colon, drawing colon, or take a picture of your book with the colon, photo, colon. So I'm saying use the pencil tool or take a picture of your book cover using the camera. And then this is going to show that they can use the T for labels or the shapes or the backgrounds. And again, these are shortcuts, which is why they have the colons on both sides. Then I say, if you want, tap the microphone and talk about why you love it. I try very hard to offer choices with tools as often as possible. But if I want the students to use particular tools, I tell them. And then a good closing instruction. When you're finished, tap the check mark and add it to your journal. Another thing that I sometimes tell students is you will know you're finished when you see the waiting for teacher approval banner at the top of your picture. I don't always put that in the instructions though. So at this point, I want to show you that there is this option to add voice instructions. Whenever possible, I try to add voice instructions for students. I don't always do it in PD classes because I don't expect that other educators want to listen to voice recorded instructions. But as a good example for students, I highly recommend it. It is an accommodation that services so many of our students, and it's really easy to do. It's one way to really embrace universal design for learning. When you add multimedia instructions or examples, it means that you can add a video for your students to look at, a book for them to read, or even an example of what their project might look like. So if I click on this, I have access to all the Seesaw creative tools. I can link to a book or a video. I can write them a note. I can upload something, add a photo, make a video. But in this case, I use the drawing tool. And in the example that I have for you on the slides, I added some text. I put in a background and some shapes. I drew a picture of a spider to go with my Charlotte's Web, and I imported a photograph of the Charlotte's Web book cover. When you're ready to add your example to your project, this isn't a spider, it only has 6 legs, just click the check mark to continue. And then if you want your students to give you back an example in a certain way, you can click Add Template for Student Response. When you're all finished, click the Save button. Over here in the slideshow, I just want to remind you, this was what we started with. These were the guidelines that we tried to follow. And this was the result. This is the difference. So I'm giving instructions, giving students resources about where they can get a new book, and then I'm giving them clear instructions about which tools to use. And here you see that if they want to play the instructions, they can do that. You might not always want to have an exemplar in there for them to look at. That's a choice, but just something to think about. When you assign an activity, just a quick review on some of the things you can do. Remember that you can assign your activity to multiple classes, and you can choose exactly which students you want to assign it to. So you could assign it to all students in the class, or you could assign it to certain work groups or whatever custom group of students. And I can't talk enough about using folders. Folders are so helpful. I might want to have a folder for Reader's Workshop. And in another video, I will show you how it helps the workflow when you add activities to your folders as you assign them. All of your students' responses will then come into those folders, and I will show you how to go about looking only at items that are in certain folders just to kind of help to streamline your workflow a little bit. When I press the check mark, I can assign it immediately to that class, or I can schedule it, and I can schedule it to come on a particular date and time. Remember, Seesaw's week starts on Monday. So if I want it to come out on Monday morning at 8 o'clock a.m., that's how I do it. I click the check mark and I'm going to assign it on that day. And then Seesaw will say, do you want to see this activity in the class? Sure, I'll look in there. And I just want to remind you that you have activities that are already assigned to your class. you have activities that are scheduled, and if you have archived activities, they are here. And it's very easy to archive activities if you have activities that your students haven't responded to and you don't want them to get overwhelmed with too many activities still out in your class. You can click the three dots, click archive activity, and it will move it from assigned to the class to archived. And that note just popped up and said, when you archive an activity, the students' responses will still be in their journals. New students who are coming into the class who haven't done the activities yet won't see those activities any longer. That can help to cut down on the overwhelming nature of getting into a Seesaw class that has a lot of activities that are still outstanding. That helps your students. One thing to consider is to only archive your own activities. If you are sharing a class with co-teachers, ask those co-teachers to archive their activities, but don't archive them for them. In future presentations, I will show you how you can add a clickable choice board or a clickable activity board, and I'll show you how you can do a word sort and how you can import a worksheet into your activity so that students can write on it.